Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Ustad.
You're early today?
Yes, Ustad. I'm eager to hear the next story.
Okay, child. Sit down. Inshallah, I'll tell you the next story. It's about the white ants. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers lived in a valley after facing the boycott from the Qurayshi tribe in Makkah. They had been living there for many days now. The weeks turned into months and the months turned into years. The situation of the people in the valley was very worse. The children were malnourished as well. It was a common sight to see the elderly people falling sick because of malnutrition. And most of the other people remained hungry because of lack of food. But in spite of all the hardships, they lived in the valley happily. They spent their days by reading Quran and praying to God. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the meantime showed exceptional organizational abilities while living through these tough times. He set up a distribution system to make sure that the scarce resources like food and water were distributed equally among his people. His teachings spread far and wide. More and more people arrived to listen to him speak about Quran. His followers increased rapidly as days went by. The Quraysh tribe, however, continued their restrictions towards the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers. They allowed no one from Makkah to help the Prophet. But there were good people living in Makkah too. Whenever they got an opportunity, some of them would load up their camel with food and supplies and leave them at the entrance of the valley. This was huge help for the Prophet and his followers. Every year, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to leave the valley and enter Makkah for a few days. He did this during the time of pilgrimage when the travelers were allowed free passage in Makkah. Violence was prohibited during those days and anybody could wander freely. Pilgrims and traders from all over Arabia arrived Makkah during this time of the year. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam took this opportunity to address the people gathered in Makkah. He quickly gained the attention of people and pretty soon there was a large crowd wherever he was speaking. Some residents of Makkah started feeling compassionate towards the Prophet. They soon started raising their voice against the cruel ways the Quraysh tribe treated the Prophet with. The Quraysh themselves soon became divided about their course of action. They now had people supporting the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam within their clan itself. One man named Hisham bin Amr couldn't hold his objection any longer. He strongly opposed the violence against the Prophet. One day he visited his friend Zuhair. "How can you eat while your uncles are starving in the mountains?" he asked Zuhair. "If they were my relatives, I wouldn't have allowed this injustice to happen." Zuhair agreed that the act of clan leaders was not justifiable at all. The two men decided to fight against the hard-hearted leaders of Quraysh from that day onwards. They invited people to join their movement. Many people living in Makkah shared the same thoughts, and people joined their group one by one. Soon their small group had 5 members in it. They now planned to confront the Quraysh leaders in public. One day, Zuhair stood near the Kaaba and started speaking to the people gathered there. He asked the people to think about what they were to their relatives living in the valley. He questioned the authority of clan leaders to announce such a boycott for no reason. He swore he would never relent until the parchment of boycott was torn to pieces and the pact broken at once. The people pondered upon what Zuhair had said. While he was speaking to the crowd, Abu Jahl, one of the prominent leaders of Quraysh clan, arrived at the scene. When Abu Jahl realized what was going on, he came forward and shouted out that there was no plan on lifting the boycott of Prophet and his followers. He retorted that the parchment of boycott would never be torn. He then informed everyone that the clan leaders were united in taking this decision. This reply from Abu Jahl angered Zuhair even further. He shouted, demanding removal of ban. When Zuhair's companions saw this, they too started demanding the removal of the ban. And in a few moments, the entire crowd present at the courtyard of Kaaba echoed his voice. In the meantime, Abu Talib, The Prophet's uncle, who was sitting at a corner, stood up and approached them. He told them that his nephew had received a revelation that the ants had eaten away all the hostile and unjust clauses of the proclamation except those parts that bore the name of Allah. The clan members decided to check if it was true. They entered Kaaba to check on the proclamation, but what they saw inside was truly amazing. A group of white ants had eaten away the paper on which the proclamation was wrote. Only the top portion remained, which mentioned the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was just like in the revelation. The people who had gathered there were spellbound. They witnessed the power of Allah that day.
MashaAllah, that was a miracle.
Yes, son, it was. Now that is all for today. I'll tell you a new story tomorrow. Goodbye, son.
Goodbye, Ustad.